Hi, welcome. My name is Cassie and I'm here with Oh So Lovely Fabrics and Patterns, and we're going to be working on the Baila Bonita dancewear set today. So this dancewear set comes with two pieces. There is the shorts and the bralette, and with both the shorts and the bralette there are a couple options. So with the shorts you have the optionality of using a modesty waistband, which is shown here, or a regular waistband, which will be about half the length. And on the bralette, you also have that same option with the band, that this is the modesty band, or you have the optionality of the regular, which would be about half the length. The last option that you have with this dancewear set is the back. You have the option to add in a cutout. Right here I have a star cutout that's featured, but you can choose from the star, the heart, there's also tree, I believe, an oval, but there's a bunch of different shapes that you can choose from, or you can just leave it without it if you want to be even simpler and a faster sew. So let's get started with the Baila Bonita from Oh So Lovely Fabrics and Patterns. So I went ahead and I pre-cut all of my pieces for the Baila Bonita. I have the back bralette, and so I cut this on the fold, and we've got the mane, as well as the lining. And I also pre-marked them in the centers just so it'd be easier when I'm done. I've got the back bralette with the mane and the lining pre-marked. I've got my two arm bindings that were cut on the fold, and those are pre-marked. And I've got the bottom bralette band. I chose the modesty option, but there are two options. You can pick either the modesty or the regular. And I've also got my short pieces. So I've got the color blocked piece that is mirrored. I've got the back of the shorts. I've got two of those mirrored as well. And I've got the other piece of the front where the color block will fit in, and I have that mirrored as well. And the last piece that we cut was the modesty band shorts. So I did the modesty band. Again, there are two options for this. You can pick either the modesty or the regular. My little one just likes the modesty. All right, let's get on to the sewing machine, and we are going to start with our bralettes back and front. What we're going to do is we're just going to line up the front piece with the back piece on the shoulder bindings. So we're just going to pin those together. Right sides together, and we are just going to tack it down right here on these two shoulder pieces for both the mane as well as the lining. All right, down, we're just going to serge along the edge. And serge along the other edge. Okay, so next we're just going to do the same thing to our lining pieces, and we're going to use a serger and attach the front of the bodice to the back of the bodice. Okay, and we're good to go. Okay, now that we have serged our shoulder seams on both the mane and the lining, what we're going to do is we are going to do our cutout if you are choosing to do so. So I'm just flipping it over on the mane to the back side, right side up, and then I'm going to use the star shape for mine. And you can use either a chalk pen, some type of marking that will wash away or will come off with the iron, and I have a friction pen too. So this is really dark fabric. Let's see if the friction pin is visible. And I can kind of see it with certain ones. Might want to go over some of the chalk with the chalk after, just to make sure I can see all my lines. Okay. Yeah, I can see my lines for the top section. I can kind of see this one, but I might want to use my chalk for down below where it's really dark. Okay, and then with my chalk pen, just like to scratch it first so it gets a little chalky. Makes it a little easier to work with. There. Now I can see my star outline. And what we're going to do is we're just going to pin the main to our lining. So I'm putting it right side up. And for the lining, I have my right side down so that the right sides are matching. And I'm just going to use my notch marks to help me go around and clip this. And then afterwards, we're just going to serge around the neck hole. Line up my shoulder seams, and I'd like to push one forward and one backward so that it just decreases the bulk right there at that seam. And I'll add in a couple extra clips. Just to keep the fabric a little closer together. Okay, so now you can either use your domestic and put down a stitch 3/8 of an inch away, or you can use your serger. I'm gonna use my serger so it looks nice and neat and clean, and we'll be back. Now that we have that neckline pinned, we're just going to sew around with the two right sides together, and I'm gonna use my serger so I have a nice clean edge and I don't have to finish it off again. When we come up to this end right here, we're just going to serge off to the side. Clip it, and then we can just tie it since it's going to be on the inside, and we have a nice clean seam. Okay, now that we have finished serging our neckline, what we're going to do is, if you would like to kind of pin down this seam, what we're going to do is we're going to flip our lining over the top of the seam so that the seam is underneath the lining, and then you can do a top stitch along the line of the lining where the lining kind of meets up with the main, and do that at about 1/8 of an inch. So if you do that, then it'll be nice and hidden and you won't see any lines on the front of your top. But if you like the look of a top stitch better, what you can do is you can just flip this inside out, pin them so the wrong sides are together, and then you can sew along the entire neckline at about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge and give that type of finished look. I think I am going to do the first one. So you can see what that looks like. So it's a little bit more of a hidden top stitch. But I'm just gonna pin this down right now so I can show you our next step. So after you have top stitched all the way around that neckline, you're going to want your right sides out, and we are going to work on our cutout. Okay. So that would be top stitched or finished stitched, whichever you prefer. This would be the front of our top and the back. So what we're doing is we are tacking down our seam allowance down to the lining side around our neck hole. I'm doing this at about 1/8 of an inch. Just gently guiding it around, making sure that I catch that seam. Okay, going over that seam, and then we're going to back stitch just to lock it and trim. Okay, so now you can see that it is tacked down so that it will stay down and it'll stay to that side. And when we fold it and press it, it'll be a nice clean edge. If you're doing the cutout, I'm gonna lay that down so it's nice and flat and it's all lined up. And I'm just gonna pin around the outside so I can still see my star cutout lines. And I'm just gonna pin it down so it doesn't shift on me while I'm gonna sew a line around that pattern that I traced. So I'm just kind of marking it with the pins as well as pinning it to the lining so that they stay down and they stay together. Get minimal shifting this way. Okay, then I'm just going to take it back to my domestic and I'm going to do a straight stretch stitch along the lines that I drew, making sure that I'm going through the top and the bottom, so the main and the lining. Okay, and we are back at the sewing machine and we are going to be going around the outline of our cutout. So I have that all pinned out flat right here, and start right there on that line. Drop my needle. Here we go. And last turn. I'm going to go over the top of that line to really lock it in. Then we're going to back stitch and trim. Okay, and you can kind of see the lines, so you can see the outline of my star. What we're going to do is we're going to very carefully kind of pull the top layer away from the lining. Give it a little snip. Making sure that we don't catch that lining. We're going to cut away all this interior fabric. Okay, and then you have your cutout. Okay, now that we have this beautiful cutout done and it's all nice and cleaned up, cut nice close to the edge, it's attached. What we're going to do is we're going to attach the side seams of both the lining and the main. And how we're going to do that is we're going to put the two right sides together. And this is the lining. We're going to line up those side seams. We're going to serge down that. And then let's do the other lining. It's a little bit more difficult if you have the cutout, just because you're going to have to kind of work around it. Okay, then for the main, you want to make sure that you put right sides together, because if you sew it like this, then the seam's showing on the outside. So we're going to kind of flip it. Make sure that we have the two right sides together. And then get our last two of the main right sides together, because this is the opening, the hole right there. And then we're going to serge along those four side seams. So one on the main, two on the main, and then one, two on the lining. Okay, let's go to our serger. Okay, got the tag, looks great. I'm going to turn it right sides out. everything looks good. Okay, we will go and do the armholes next. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take our Baila Bonita bralette band, and we are marking the center point. So what I did was I just folded it in half, lining up my edges, and then I took my shears, little mini snips, and I just put little marks on both sides. And we're going to put those now right sides together. I'm going to sew along that short edge so I make a perfect circle around. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to mark my arm bindings. This isn't really necessary, but I like to mark the centers just to make it all nice and even. A little snip. And you can also do this if you don't want to snip it to your fabric, but it is within the seam allowance. You can also just use clips to mark it as well. And while we're at it, might as well do the bands. Make sure that you clip these right sides together so that the seam goes on the inside when it will be hidden. Okay, and I might as well just sew the waistband for the shorts as well too. Right sides together. Cut it off. Cut off from the machine. Separate them. Okay. And then what we're going to do with the armbands, because we are going to be folding them in half, I'm just going to put a little notch and make sure that I don't go through that last set of stitches in the middle, so that when I fold it, I can fold them opposite, so I cut down on the seam allowance. All right. Okay, now that we have serged our side seams, what we're going to do is we are going to find and quarter the armholes for the bands or the binding, whichever you choose. So this pattern is actually pretty cool in the fact that you can do either binding or you can do just simple bands. If you are doing the bands, make sure that you cut it off at the end 1/4 of an inch, otherwise it'll be too long. So I'm taking these two bands. So again, if you're doing the bands instead of the binding, you should, before you sew anything together, before you stitch these, cut off 1/4 of an inch on each of them. So we have our marks for our center mark. We have our seam. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to quarter these really fast. Just so we have another reference point, so we get it nice and even all the way around the band. And then I'm also going to find the quarter marks on my armband holes too. Out of the way. So I'm using my seam and my other seam as my two kind of center points. So I'll just kind of line those up. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line the edges and then make a little mark. I'm going to do the same for the other side. Make a tiny little mark. Okay. And I'm going to do that on this as well. Just kill 2 birds with 1 stone, get it all done. Okay. I'm going to do this last arm. Mark that. So now I've got the seam, got this mark, this seam, and this one. So I have 4 quarters. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the side seam. I'm going to line that up first with my seam for my band so that they're a little bit more hidden. Clip that all together. Then I'm going to go around. I'm going to clip my quarter mark on this one. Oops. Line that one up with this other quarter mark. My center. And my last one. Okay, now we are going to attach the arm binding at about 1/4 of an inch stitch. Back stitch. Okay, now that that's attached, okay, so we have already finished one of the arm bands, so we're going to do the second one now. And we attached it, and now what we're doing is we're looking at the back side. So it's attached from the front. We are folding it over, and we're folding it over in half down to the band, and then we are going to encapsulate all those threads and stuff, and we'll trim away the ones that are sticking out. Okay. And then I'm just gonna do this really fast. So I fold it over in half, and then I wrap it around. Okay, we're gonna go all the way around the whole entire armband till it's encapsulated. And then we're gonna top stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge onto the black. Okay, we are going to now top stitch that arm binding, and I'm just going right next to that line. I'm just gonna be making sure from the back side, feeling with my fingers to make sure that it's catching. Okay, back stitch. Okay, and that looks nice. Nice and enclosed. Okay. Next we are going to attach the band. And we already marked the center, so all we have to do now is mark the quarter marks. Okay, pinch it together at those 2 points, and mark our corners. Needle snip. And we'll open it up, fold it in half, and again I like to push my seams one way and the opposite way so that it just makes it not quite as thick. There's our back. Now that we have that all lined up, I'm actually going to put this seam over on the side because there is already a side seam, so it'll look a little bit more natural. I'll sandwich together. Okay, have it all nice and quartered. And now I'm just gonna serge around this edge, this bottom edge right here, and then our band, and we'll be done. Okay, now we are serging our band onto our top. And sew that in underneath. Now at this point you can top stitch your band. You can fold your seam down and top stitch down. That is an option. I kind of like it without the extra serging and sewing, but our top is finished and we'll just go give it a good press really fast and show you the end. All right, now we are going to move on to building our shorts. So I have all of my shorts pieces here. I've got the back of my shorts, the modesty band, as well as the front of the shorts and the color block piece. So with the band of the shorts, I'm going to do exactly what we did for our top as well on that band. And you're just going to fold it in half, find the center mark, make a little snip, just so that'll be a lot easier when you're lining everything up at the end. So that'll be in the front. And we'll fold it right sides together, and we can clip this. And we can just serge along this edge right here, so we make a perfect loop for when we're ready to do that piece. We don't really need to work with this piece, the back piece, quite yet, so I'm going to put that to the side, and we're going to be working with the front piece as well as the color block piece. So with these, take one of your sections. I'm just going to take this one and this one, because these are the two right sides. So eventually we're going to have it so it's sewn and it fits in like that. So we have a nice little detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip. I'm going to kind of line it up. I'm going to flip this, and I'm going to center it. And I'm going to just clip it along this edge. You can see it's pretty well centered. And we're just gonna baste along this line at about 1/8 of an inch, just so that I have it down, so when I hit it with my serger that I have it and everything's not gonna move on it. All right, I'll be right back. We don't need a back stitch because this is just a baste. Okay, nice simple little baste. And now we're going to get this other side of the corner, make sure that it's right sides together. And we're going to baste it along this edge so that we have a nice clean corner. I'm going right to where I can feel the fabric. And I'm just going close, drop my needle. And ready to take over to the serger. So these have simple basting. I'm using white thread just so that you can see it. And then when I turn it out and serge it, it'll be a nice clean corner. All right, let's go. Okay, now that we have that basted, what we're going to do is we're going to serge along these two edges to make sure that it's locked in and sealed. Okay, and when when I get to this end right here, I'm going to kind of turn my fabric so it tapers off and it doesn't catch any of my other fabric. There we go. Now we're going to do the same down on this edge. Making sure I don't grab any of that extra fabric on the back. And just run it off the end. Okay, nice and serged. I got both edges. And since this is going to be hidden, I'm going to sew this into the fabric. All right, let's go top stitch. Okay, now that we have these nice clean serged edges, we're just going to flip it over. We're going to give it a good press and press down our seams. And then we're going to top stitch along this line and this line. Going back over, I'm going to top stitch, and I'm just using a simple straight stretch stitch, and I'm using my foot here as a guide following this line. Okay, and then we'll just keep our seams nice and flat. We're going to give it a good press and on to attaching it to the back of the shorts. Okay, so now we're going to just sew with both of our back pieces, right sides together. We're going to sew along this curved inner crotch line. Okay, serge together, put that to the side. And we're going to do the front as well. So I have the front, right sides together. We're going to sew along this curve right here. Okay, so now that is sewn together along that line, and the two fronts are put together. Okay, next step. Now that we have serged both the inside kind of crotch curve right here, what we're going to do is we're going to lay out our pieces. So we have our back, right side up, and we have our front, and we're going to go right side down. And what we're going to do is we're going to pin along this side seam. And we're going to pin along this other side seam as well. And last but not least, what we're going to do is we're going to pin along this bottom crotch seam right here. And I'm going to lay my two serge seams opposite one another. So one's going to the left, one's going to go to the right, so that it reduces the bulk on that. And just clip it. And we're going to go and we're going to serge both sides and then this crotch right here. We are just going to serge along those two side seams and the crotch seam. Okay, now that we have our side seams, our crotch seam, and our tag attached, what we're going to do is we are going to quarter the shorts and just make sure that we mark those spots. So I'm using the two middle seams, line them up and saying, yep, that is actually a really nice quarter right at the points. Perfect. Okay. Then we're going to take our waistband. I'm going to fold it wrong sides together, and I'm kind of putting these seams off to either side just so that reduces the bulk. Clip that. And then we have our marking from our front as well that we did earlier, and I'm going to mark these corners too. Just put a little nip. The quarter marks. Down on both sides. And as well on the bottom. Nip. Okay. Gonna fold that band over, matching up my nips, little notches. And the last one. And then make sure that it's going right sides up. I'm going to take that seam line, I'm going to put it at the back side. Go line that up with my back. I'm going to line the front up with that front seam. And then these side seams, their other quarter marks. Put that down. And let's clip this one down. Okay, then we're going to take it to the serger and we're going to serge all the way around the band hoop. And we will be almost done. I always like to start a little bit past my tag so that I can make sure that I'm grabbing everything. Getting that tag under that seam. And then it lays flat. like to leave a little bit of tail so that I can sew that in later. Okay. And this is optional if you'd like to. This is your time when you should top stitch down your seam allowance if you'd like to do that. Otherwise, looking good. All we have to do is finish the legs on the bottom. Okay, and to finish off these shorts, all we're going to do is we are going to fold in our leg openings about 1/4 of an inch, and then we're going to fold it over another 1/4 of an inch. Be really careful on where you have the cutouts because it's going to be a lot of layers. So just be aware of that when you're going over it with your sewing machine, to go really slow over that section. I usually start with that because it's the thickest part. Okay, and we're going to do that to the other leg hole, and then we're going to go to our sewing machine, and we're going to do a finishing stitch, close those out, and your shorts will be done. Okay, and she's hemmed. And we are done. This is the Baila Bonita Dance Set. Again, it comes with a couple of different options. You can have the modesty bands, which I have shown here, or the regular ones. We worked on the star cutout. Again, this is an option. You don't have to have a cutout at all, but altogether this was only about an hour or so. So thank you again to Oh So Lovely Fabric and Patterns for letting me help out with this, and I hope you have a great day. Bye everyone.